معرفة.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Hussam. This is Hamid, and I just wanted to reconfirm with you if the driver reached you in time.
Wa alaikum assalam. Yes, Mr. Hamid. I am on my way for the meeting and will see you shortly.
Sir, we have reached the venue.
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Hussam. Welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you, Mr. Hamid?
Alhamdulillah. I'm doing good. Please follow me.
Sure.
Let me introduce you to the key committee members.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Good to have you here with us.
Mr. Hussam, shall we start our meeting?
Sure, why not? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First, I want to thank you for inviting me. Well, I understand the Ministry of Finance is intending to issue a Sukuk and would like to seek advice in this regard. I would like to have an interactive session, therefore you can directly ask me questions and we can continue our discussion. I would like to start the discussion with a question. If our state wants to raise funds, what option do we have?
We will issue bonds.
Yes, you're right, Mr. Zubair. A state like us or any company can issue bonds to raise funds. As you all are aware, a bond is an IOU, meaning to say that it is a debt investment which generates a fixed interest return over an agreed period. On the contrary, Sukuk is an asset-linked certificate where the income or profit to the certificate holder is derived from an underlying asset of the Sukuk. Sukuk represents certificates of equal value representing undivided ownership share in assets or usufructs or services.
Why should a company prefer Sukuk to raise funds instead of other means of Islamic financing?
The two main advantages of preferring Sukuk are, number one, a company can tap into the international market to raise funds. In this way, a company can attract global investors. Number two, Sukuk is a liquid instrument. That means anytime an investor holding a Sukuk can liquidate it in the secondary market.
Is there any commercial advantage?
Oh yes, even the pricing is very competitive in comparison with other means of financing. Hence, it is in favor of the client who wants to raise funds through Sukuk.
Since when were Sukuk introduced in Islamic finance?
Sukuk comes from the root word sak, meaning seal, and appeared in the early Islamic caliphates within 100 years of the Prophet Muhammad's peace be upon him migration. In addition, Imam Malik, one of the foremost Islamic scholars, recorded first account of Sukuk in his prominent book Muwatta.
How Sukuk were introduced in modern times.
Very good question, Mr. Rashid. The modern forms of Sukuk were introduced during the last 4 decades to a well-organized global market today. In fact, there have also been incorporations of specific legislation of Sukuk, not just in the Muslim countries, but also in many non-Muslim nations.
What are the different kinds of Sukuk?
Generally, there are 2 kinds of Sukuk. One is the asset-based Sukuk, in which the asset remains under the ownership of the investor throughout the maturity period, and the payoff to the investor is linked to the performance of the asset. The second is the debt-based Sukuk, in which the asset do not remain with the investor and the payoff to the investor is linked to the credit risk of the originator.
Can you give some examples for our reference?
Yes, sure. Sukuk al-Musharaka, Sukuk al-Mudaraba, Sukuk al-Wakala are some of the asset-based Sukuk, whereas Sukuk al-Murabaha, Sukuk al-Istisna, Sukuk al-Salam are some of the debt-based Sukuk.
Now tell me how to issue a Sukuk.
A Sukuk is issued by establishing a special purpose vehicle which is known as SPV. It is an entity whose operations are limited to the acquisition and financing of specific assets. It is usually a subsidiary company with an asset liability structure and legal status that makes its obligations secure even if the parent company goes bankrupt. A company uses such a vehicle to finance a large project without putting the entire firm at risk.
Please explain the nature of Sukuk assets.
The 5 main points regarding the nature of the assets are that the assets have to be qualified, quantified, need to have a value, be beneficial and revenue generating.
Is there any time limitation for maturity?
Yes, Sukuk have a maturity period. The maturity period is the duration for which the Sukuk were issued.
What are the operational aspects of Sukuk?
Sure, there are 3 main operational features of Sukuk. First is the issuance, second is the subscription, and the third is the redemption. Let's take the issuance first. The SPV will issue the Sukuk which carry an issue price. The investors subscribe to the issued Sukuk and pay the principal amount, which is the total issue price for the number of Sukuk subscribed.
What will the SPV do with the amount received from the Sukuk holders?
The SPV purchases assets using the principal amount received from the Sukuk holders.
Are the Sukuk holders paid any periodic income?
Yes, generally the Sukuk holder will be paid a periodic income on quarterly, half-yearly or annual basis as periodic distribution.
On what the amount of periodic distribution is based on?
The distribution is done in proportion to the holding of Sukuk. It means each investor gets the distribution amount proportionate to the number of Sukuk one holds.
Brilliant. Then it would be a regular source of income.
Exactly.
What happens when the Sukuk is matured?
This is the third operational feature of Sukuk. It is called redemption.
Redemption? Does it mean to cancel?
No, it's not cancellation. It means to buy back Sukuk assets.
Who will buy back the Sukuk assets in this case?
At maturity, the Sukuk holders surrender the Sukuk to the SPV and the client purchases the underlying Sukuk assets and pays the purchase price to the SPV, and the SPV distributes the purchase price to the investors proportionate to the number of Sukuk each investor holds.
Please tell us the mechanism of any Sukuk.
Why not? Let's take Sukuk al-Ijara. For example, if the government wants to raise $100 million to be paid within 5 years through Sukuk al-Ijara, the SPV will use the Sukuk investment proceeds received from the investors to purchase identified assets from the government and lease them back to it against periodic rentals, which shall include the profit component. These rentals would be paid to investors on a periodic basis, and on maturity, which is 5 years, the assets shall be purchased back by the government on certain price, which includes the face value of the asset, that is the $100 million.
Please tell us the mechanisms of any Sukuk. If the government doesn't want to sell the asset, then is there any alternative?
Yes. Even for this, there is an alternative. The funds collected from the Sukuk holders can be invested in government's agreed business plan under the structure of Mudaraba, where the government acts as manager, or Wakala, where the government can act as an agent, and the investors are paid periodic return generated from the business, and on the maturity, the Sukuk assets of the business are purchased by the government.
What about trading?
Trading of Sukuk is allowed only after the closing of subscription. Sukuk are traded in the secondary market as per their market value. It is necessary that there has to be at least 1/3 of the Sukuk assets in tangible form for tradability to be Sharia compliant. That is the reason the debt-based Sukuk are not allowed to be traded, as there is no tangible Sukuk asset existing.
If there is a shortfall in the periodic return, then how is it treated?
In such cases, The Sharia compliant financing is obtained on behalf of Sukuk holders by the originator, who raises the funds through Sukuk. And the Sukuk holders repay this obligation on maturity of the Sukuk. I have covered the main aspects of Sukuk, and if there are any further questions, please feel free to get in touch with me.
Brilliant piece of information. Thank you very much, Hussam, for taking out time from your busy schedule.
No problem at all. It was my pleasure.
Let me call the driver so that he can drop you to the airport.